What is a ritual? When dysfunction becomes a spell. Welcome back. I'm Adeline Atlas, 11 times published author, and this is the Occult Families, How to Spot Them series. Trigger warning. This video series covers disturbing and very serious topics. Full legal disclaimer in the video description below. Before we go any further in this series, we need to get something clear, something foundational that reshapes how you look at everything. The word ritual. Most people, when they hear ritual, immediately picture cloaks, candles, pentagrams, or secret ceremonies spoken in Latin. They imagine torches, full moons, and eerie music. But that's the Hollywood version, a dramatized layer meant to confuse the truth. The reality is much more subtle, more common, and far more dangerous. Because in most families that operate with ritual intention, it never looks like ritual. It looks like routine. Let's define it properly. A ritual is any repeated action performed with intent. That's it. It doesn't need props or costumes or a specific location. What it needs is emotional charge, predictable outcome, and conscious or unconscious design. It is an act of energetic architecture, and whether it's formal or casual, if it produces the same spiritual result each time, it's functioning as a ritual. So no, not every family is a cult, but many families are ritualistic, and that difference is everything. Ritual is about more than repetition. It's about what the repetition creates, what outcome it secures. When someone repeatedly shames you the moment you express joy, that's not a fluke. That's energetic collapse being programmed into your system. If every time you tell the truth, you're punished with guilt or silence, that's not just dysfunction. That's a ritual of suppression. If your birthday, every single year, comes with a meltdown, illness, or psychic collapse, you're not cursed. You're on a schedule. And that's the core teaching here. Rituals run on schedules. They are timed, emotional, recurring, and they're often hidden inside family dynamics that look like drama, when in fact, they are carefully constructed energetic mechanisms designed to redirect your life force. Let's break that down further. Think of a ritual like an energetic spell, not the kind you cast with herbs and chants, but the kind you participate in without even realizing it. In the context of a ritualistic family, the drama is never the point. It's the distraction. The real ritual is the energetic exchange happening underneath. It's what's happening to your power. When you feel emotionally sabotaged the moment you begin to rise, that's not an accident. It's not just an unhealed parent acting out. That's an energetic pattern designed to collapse your expansion. When you succeed and someone suddenly falls ill, pulling your attention back into guilt, care, or regression, that's a siphon. And if it happens every time, on cue, it's not random. It's ritual. These families often use spiritual law against their own. The law of repetition, the law of mirrors, the law of intention. Without ever saying so, they engineer a feedback loop that keeps your joy, your momentum, your truth suppressed, and your life force redirected. You're not being emotionally reactive. You're being pulled into an altar you didn't know you were kneeling at. That's why in this series, we won't be using the word abuse as a generic label. Abuse is real and painful. But in the types of families we're discussing here, something more systemized is happening, something spiritual. It's abuse as architecture. Repeated, reinforced, timed, and charged. So that it doesn't just hurt you in the moment, it programs you for life. These are what we call ritual grids. Recurring energetic setups that are maintained through behavior, language, silence, and timing. They aren't always consciously designed by the individual family members. Often, they're inherited, learned, passed down like family recipes. But their effect is the same. They create cycles of energy loss, identity suppression, and spiritual containment that feel inescapable until you name them for what they are. Let's look at some real-life examples that might sound familiar and devastatingly ordinary. If you grew up in a household where every time you expressed happiness, someone cut it down, mocked it, or made you feel guilty for it, then joy became unsafe. You were trained to associate expansion with danger. That is not just an unhealthy dynamic. That is emotional conditioning used as ritual. Or perhaps every time you tried to express your truth, you were accused of being dramatic, lying, or hurting the family. That wasn't just gaslighting. That was a recurring suppression ritual designed to sever your relationship with your own voice. That's spiritual programming. And what about those strange collapses that happen every time you try to move forward? The job offer that falls through the day after a family call. The relationship that crashes right after a sibling's breakdown. The random illness that hits on your birthday every year. When patterns like these have emotional charge, family entanglement, and predictable outcomes, they're not coincidence. They're energetic rituals running on inherited scripts. And here's the key. Ritual doesn't require belief. You don't need to believe in magic for a ritual to work. You only need repetition, emotion, and outcome. The subconscious is programmed by what is repeated, not what is true. That's why children in these systems grow up feeling energetically blocked, even if no formal spell was ever cast. Because if you are punished every time you shine, you will learn to dim, not just emotionally, spiritually, You will internalize that forward motion equals pain. And that is the ultimate success of ritualized control, when the victim becomes their own enforcer. In this context, your trauma becomes a technology. It's not just a wound. It's a code, one that creates a specific energetic signature. And when that signature is predictable, harvestable, and reinforced, it is spiritually weaponized. That's what these families have done for generations. Turn dysfunction into design. This is also why leaving doesn't always solve the problem. Because ritual doesn't live in the house. It lives in the field. You can go no contact and still feel energetically hijacked, emotionally destabilized, or psychically attacked. Because the rituals weren't about proximity. They were about programming. You may have grown up thinking, this is just how our family is. You may have blamed yourself, thought you were too sensitive, too dramatic, not strong enough. But that's part of the spell. The more you believe you're the problem, the more effective the ritual becomes. That's how it works. It uses your own energy to keep itself alive. That's why awareness is the first act of spiritual freedom. You cannot break what you haven't named. And as long as you call it dysfunction, you'll miss the deeper truth, that your life was designed to orbit someone else's energy needs. That your joy, your clarity, your forward movement was always the threat, and therefore always the target. So let's call it what it is. If the behavior is repeated, emotionally charged, spiritually impactful, and produces predictable collapse, it's not just toxic, it's a ritual. Rituals are not always chosen. Many are inherited, but they can be ended. And it begins with seeing them clearly. Not dramatizing them, not minimizing them, but naming them. And that's what this series is here to help you do. Because the moment you see the ritual for what it is, you can stop participating. You can remove your energy from the cycle. You can starve the structure. You can collapse the altar. There's power in naming, power in clarity, and power in refusal. But none of those are possible if you're still calling it chaos. It's not chaos. It's choreography. Hi, I'm Adeline Atlas, 11 times published author, and what you just watched is part of my signature program, the Chosen One series inside School of Soul. This series is not just a course, it's a blueprint for those who know they were different from the start. The black sheep, the scapegoat, the truth teller, the cycle breaker. Inside, you'll discover the family roles playbook, the golden child, the scapegoat, the enabler, the lost child, and how to finally step out of the part you were cast in without consent. How the black sheep becomes the goat, turning rejection into radical transformation in leadership. How to break generational curses and rewrite ancestral contracts so the pain stops with you. And how to recognize and escape modern forms of spiritual and technological targeting, from gang stalking to synthetic synchronicity. This isn't just about survival. It's about awakening, about reclaiming your voice, your lineage, and your destiny as one of the chosen ones. Click the link below to access the full series now, because the role ends the moment you decide it does, and the real script begins with you.